Hello. Do you guys hate it when the thing you love starts throwing up in your mouth? Shit, I think I started out too strong. My bad. Okay, Vinland Saga was beyond great for 99 chapters, until Thorfinn left the farm. It had everything going for it. From the objectively greatest character of all time, in my opinion.
The reason I'm telling you all this is because I'm playing both sides so that I always come out on top.
To two characters fighting to rival his top spot. This guy a little more. To then so many other greatly and efficiently written characters, all having different philosophies, motivations, and standings in this unforgiving world. Every character treated with such precision and respect in this world built on war and slavery, from albeit exaggerated but thought out battles, to genius intense political maneuvers, to then slow character drama on a farm. Vinland Saga moved and changed so much, but it always feeling natural and logical. But then the Eastern Expedition / Baltic Sea War arc happened, giving me so much whiplash and now looking like King Sven. This video is just going to go through this arc, not the resulting one. Not because the next one is better, but just because this one is all I need to prove this manga is done for. So let's look at how a masterpiece could take a master piss on everything that it once was. And let's dive straight into the piss. So, Thorfinn returns home to Iceland, where he greets his older sister, who he hasn't seen in all these years, and gets a foot to the face. Not a great start for my guy, but I can't blame Jova, because she assumed Thorfinn was a con artist trying to con Leif. Then he goes to his mother, and after the absolute trollage from Bug Eyes, it was a very heartwarming scene. We've been waiting for Thorfinn's reunion with his mother for 100 chapters, and it's very nice to see. I like it. Then they enter into Thorfinn's past home, and Jova shows up. It's now she finds out that this Thorfinn is the same Thorfinn as her 6-year-old brother from all that time ago. She must wonder how he is even still alive, and what torment he has gone through, from seeing his father's death to then be surviving at whatever means necessary, as a young child in this cruel and dangerous world. A 6-year-old boy separated from everything he loves and knows, and yet here he is, after all this, standing in front of her, arms out, with an expression of pure joy at a proper reunion with his long-lost sister. So she does this. Now what the fuck? Why? Is it supposed to be that she's annoyed he didn't come back until now? You selfish cunt, he was fucking 6 years old, went through hell and back, and this is your response? I think I know the real reason this dogshit scene exists, and it's for supposed comedy. What's the joke here? Woman punches man. Funniest shit I've ever seen. We later find out Thorfinn was knocked out for like half a day by this, which is just unreal. What are we doing here? How did this happen straight after the end of one of the best arcs in anything ever? Thorfinn went from tanking 100 punches from a Goliath, all for him to be sucker punched by his fucking sister, knocking him out. My boy doesn't deserve this. Nobody deserves this. And Jova needs to be locked up. Man, from a small time we got with Jova before this, I actually really liked her character. The way she dealt with the trauma of losing her father and brother was so cool and unique. She was trying to push the sadness and possible regret to the back of her mind by doing tasks around the village day and night, but to finally break down in the arms of her mother. She was so realistic and likable, but to be reduced to this is a damn shame. And last thing about this, no one calls Jova out on her bullshit. They act like this is just a regular meme that happens. I'm especially frustrated with Einar being so quiet. He should have his brother's back after all they've been through. But no, he says nothing. Man, I sure hope supposed comedy like this doesn't completely ruin what Vinland Saga once was. So then Halfdan and Siggy make their appearance and talk about a bard or something. So later on, Thorfinn tells everyone about everything that had happened to him throughout the years, and ends on saying about his mission to build a land of peace in Vinland. And Helga tells him it's his life's purpose, which I find strange. It's not a hard choice to decide his life's purpose. That's for Thorfinn to decide. Like, he's just been back for one day. What? Why did Thorfinn have to be the one to build this land of peace? Thor's didn't. He just started a family with Helga away from all the war. It just feels like needless pressure on Thorfinn. What if he fails? What if he decides he just wants to quit and start a family like Thor's did? Now, it's one thing to support your son's quest for good, but I don't see why Helga, of all people, is implying this is the only thing Thorfinn is allowed to do. What else is a life's purpose? Very weird dialogue, but moving on. Atli says he's gonna need some gold and brings Halfdan as a place to get some. But to be careful, he is a bad man. Now we see Gudrid is attempted to hide away on the gang ship, which just arrived, and Siggy goes to find her. She shows herself and starts arguing with Leif about letting her on the ship. Leif rants about how a sailor can't be a woman, which will come up more later. Okay, now a lot happens all at once. Gudrid cuts her hair to be done with being a woman, and then hears people shouting for her, so she runs to the ship and slips and hits her head, knocking her out. Siggy's gang seem to be pretty close, and Siggy notices her just after she gets knocked out. Then they think to grab her and take her on the boat. As Siggy also sees the cut hair, he assumes it's a kidnapping, and so he goes to attack them with his chain. This is simply all just bullshit drama based on a stupid series of coincidences and contrivances. So, for this drama to happen, Gudrid has to first cut her hair, leave it on the dock, then had to hear the shouting whilst the gang either didn't hear it, or not realize it might be to do with her. Keep in mind, Siggy and the gang shouting were pretty close this whole time. Then most importantly, she has to slip and hit her head so hard she becomes unconscious, so she can't explain the situation, and Siggy has to notice her at the worst possible time, just after she fell over. Now Thorfinn and gang, instead of calling for help, they have to do the suspicious move of putting her in the ship. So now for the drama. It's Thorfinn vs Siggy, and Thorfinn's blocking the chain, which is something like a dagger on his tip, with what I believe is his cloak, but I may be wrong. Thorfinn ends up getting pierced through it on his arm, and Einar has the genius plan of just being a meat shield. And this is a shit I hate. Siggy is seemingly just about to stab Einar with the end of a hook, which honestly could leave even fatal damage, but Halfdan just happens to show up and tell him to stop at the very last moment. This shit happens so often in media, and it's so frustrating. I'm just meant to live with the fact that Einar might very well be dead over the most ridiculous sets of coincidences, all leading to such a cheap and pointless drama, if something incredibly lucky didn't happen. I hate it. Also, about the fight, it's fine for Siggy to assume it's likely a kidnapping, and I know he is presented as rash, but him going ham with a chain when they are clearly unarmed is just too much, especially if you want me to emphasize with the men. Maybe give them a threat first, tell them to hand back Gudrid or else, and then look to question them. Also, I think Einar should be smarter than just body blocking Thorfinn and letting himself get hit. Maybe he could run straight to Siggy to close the distance of his chain and try to fight him up close. He should be way smarter and less suicidal. Okay, so Halfdan pulls up. Everyone finds out that Gudrid is the bride of the wedding with Siggy. Halfdan finds out he's talking to Thorfinn, son of Thor's, and invites him to his home. Skip a bit, and now is where the story of Vinland Saga meets a breaking point, where there is some irreversible damage to the characters and plot. So the gang is at Halfdan's place, and they tell Halfdan about their Vinland plan. They want to gather over 100 volunteers and the ships to carry them along with supplies. Halfdan asks them how they would repay them if they fail, and then brings up something huge. That Leif's brother attempted to colonize Vinland, but he failed. He failed because they warred with the natives and lost. This new knowledge should be absolutely devastating to Thorfinn and Einar. and just have the potential to flip the entire story on its head. Okay, why do I think this? Well, Thorfinn and Einar did not know that Vinland had any natives, and actually were under the impression that they didn't. Back in chapter 83, in Farmland, Thorfinn and Einar were talking about a place which needed no swords. And Einar pretty much said it's impossible because wherever you go, war will find you, and you would need to defend yourself. This is where a wave of nostalgia washes over Thorfinn, and he remembers about Vinland. He says Leif told him about it, that there's a rich, vast land beyond the great western sea, a landmass entirely untouched. The entire dream of Vinland hinged on the fact that it was unpopulated. Okay, so knowing this, how did Thorfinn and Einar react to this news? Of not only Vinland already having natives, but also Leif's brothers group having failed to colonize Vinland, from having many die in a war with the natives. Well, initially, what would you call these faces? Slightly surprised? Thorfinn asks Leif if it's true, and Leif says it is true, with a caveat that his brother was the one who shot first, and that he is confident that if Thorfinn leaves the settlement, things won't turn out like they did with his brother. And that's all, yes. Thorfinn and Einar have no more fucking reaction. This was it, followed by them completely stone-faced 20 seconds later. Einar's dream for Arneid just got potentially obliterated, and yet he doesn't make a single comment, now or ever. And Thorfinn's only comment was asking if it was true. This barrier in their Vinland plan might just be made of obsidian. Surely the first thing they should think of is why wouldn't the natives be just as violent as the Vikings? Why wouldn't they have wars and slavery? I'm no expert on this, but apparently they fucking did. I do think it would be fine for them to go and try the Vinland plan, absolutely. But they should instantly realize, like they had in Farmland, that where there are people, there is going to be some war. Also, how long were you going to wait to tell them, Leif, about how their dream to start a new country wasn't new at all? Were you going to keep this hidden this whole time? To fulfill your selfish desires of settling Vinland? Huh? Okay, next, Thorfinn doesn't know that birds aren't humans. Wait, let me explain. So Halfdan tells everyone but the leader Thorfinn to leave, so it's just him, one-on-one. Thiggy assumedly captured the same bird Halfdan was eyeing earlier, and gave it to him as a gift. Though Thorfinn sees this turn in the cage, and asks to let it out. Halfdan says if you let it out, it will suffer a miserable death of freezing and starvation. Oh, so that's the end of that, right? Bird in cage, or bird dying horribly. Easy choice for me. So Thorfinn wants the bird to choose. Excuse me? What in the flying fuck? It's a fucking bird. A bird. It doesn't know the ramifications of anything. It can't speak your language, Thorfinn. It doesn't know what the fuck is going on. Okay. How does Thorfinn let the bird choose? By letting it out of its cage and putting food next to it. If it eats the food, then it wants to stay. And if it leaves the food, then it would rather die a horrible death, apparently. So the bird flies away, because of its bird-like qualities, which is also Halfdan's son's gift leaving. Wasn't Thorfinn meant to get on his good side? Oh well, I don't really know what else to say about it. It's a bird. Thorfinn, who is meant to fight needless suffering, is cursing this bird to suffer horribly. Halfdan then says he isn't seeing eye to eye with him. Yeah, no shit. Thorfinn thinks he may have upset him. Well, yeah. Later, Thorfinn reveals some narwhal horns that Halfdan gave him, and Leif reveals that they actually are worth a lot of money, but it's tricky to get, so it's a challenge from Halfdan to get the money from them. Leif explains that the narwhal horns can be sold as unicorn horns in Greece. They can be sold for a very high price and are known for healing illness. Now, Thorfinn pretty much realizes that it's just a scam, and I do kind of wonder if it's in his character to go along with it, especially how they are meant for medical use. Like, it would feel weird to me if he's selling this fake cure to someone who's saying his mother has cancer and I need to spend all my wealth to cure it, you know? Anyway, they don't give a shit because it's apparently worth his weight in gold. And then Leaf says something to bear in mind for later. He says that there are pirates at sea and beasts on land, and there's no guarantee of survival. Later, Leaf tells Einar and Bug Eyes that Thorfinn is a good man, and so can reason with the inhabitants of Vinland. And Einar is just happy with his logic and is smiling. This isn't the Einar I know. In Farmland, he was always questioning Thorfinn's philosophy and possibility of Vinland working. He was the more rational one, so why does it feel like he's lost all his character? Now Gudrid asks for a test to show she is a sailor. Leaf decides on lifting heavy ropes, which even Bug Eyes would struggle to carry. Well, she manages to vet a prize, but Leaf is still unsatisfied. And then she asks, if she was a man, would she be a sailor? And Leaf says, yes. And then she walks off with everyone watching. Okay, I don't know much about sailing, but I'm sure Leaf has a good point that in general, women aren't cut out for it, as they aren't strong enough, right? So all of this is just written so childishly. Why is Gudrid so strong here? Has she been doing push-ups this whole time? She's got a tiny build, so how is she as strong as Bug Eyes? But given she's this weirdly strong, there's no good reason except sexism to why she shouldn't be a sailor, right? So even if Leaf is still stuck in his ways, shouldn't Thorfinn and Einar try to reason with him? I guess another reason why women shouldn't be sailors is what would happen if pirates raided them. You know, women would be much more likely fuck shit to happen to them. But no one ever mentions this, so I shouldn't have to. So the marriage is happening, and it's time for the consummation. And when Sigurd goes to do the deed, Gudrid subconsciously stabs him in the leg. Siggy then slaps her, and she runs off. I feel this is a very unrealistic and silly way to deal with such a complex and sensitive topic, but whatever. She ends up meeting the gang at the ship, and ends up going with them on their journey. Am I stupid? Why is this ship so small here? And then Siggy decides to get his honor back by going after Gudrid and retrieving her. So this is the end of this little mini arc in Halfdan's village. I skipped over some Gudrid parts, and so I want to summarize her character up to this point. Because while I think her character is quite simple, I do think it is a decent start, which sadly won't get any development whatsoever later on. So as a child, she learned about the vast outside world from Leif himself. She was so enamored by it that it was all she thought about, and her greatest dream was to explore it. However, due to her sex and her place on the edge of the world in Greenland, she couldn't be a sailor and had to be a woman and take a man for marriage. She eventually acted like she accepted this, but she really didn't. And I would say part of subconsciously stabbing Siggy was her not being able to go through with this being her new life. And now she has been let into the gang and is off to explore the world. So that's about where we are at. So back to it. The gang go to the Faroes to meet with Leif's friends. And now there is a scene which I appreciate. At least I would if it meant anything later. Thorfinn speaks to Einar about how even his father kept around his sword, and that he wasn't able to cast away his sword until the very end. This is making Thorfinn wonder whether he will be able to navigate the mission without ever needing to draw the sword again. Einar laughs him off, thinking it's hilarious that Thorfinn is more concerned about hurting others than his own survival, and that he'll be fine. He sparred with the great King Canute. Thorfinn rightfully replies that it was just good luck, and that Canute is a man that can be reasoned with. What's a little missing here is that Thorfinn got what he wanted by literally pure luck. He wasn't even trying to convince Canute to leave the farm after Canute initially declined, but whatever. And then Einar says, Thorfinn, remember that I know who you are, and if your options dwindle and you're forced to take the last resort you fear, then remember how I know how you feel. Thorfinn doesn't know what to reply, and Einar says, maybe that's not much consolation after all. Thorfinn says, it is. Thank you, brother. If this isn't set up for Thorfinn needing to use the last resort, then I don't know what is. But more than that, it shows Thorfinn and Einar both know that the last resort may happen, because obviously, to protect the people you care about, there are situations where the last resort is needed. Kill or be killed. I wonder if this will come up later. So they set sail again and come across a place after a war in the Shetlands with dead bodies everywhere. Thorfinn finds a dog which leads him to a woman and a baby in a cellar. The woman dies and Thorfinn takes the baby and says, "We need to find someone who will raise this baby as tenderly as their own. Otherwise, this mother spirit cannot rest." Well, let's see about that. The gang camp out on some shore, and come morning, Siggy shows up to confront them. Gudrid is very luckily hidden, and so Thorfinn claims she is dead, that there was a storm, and she was overboard in a blink. Now, if I were Thorfinn, I probably wouldn't tell the man who tried to kill all of you when he initially thought you were trying to kidnap Gudrid, that you let her die after kidnapping her. That may just be the worst strategy possible to not get Siggy to try to kill you. Either way, Thorfinn, Leif, and Einar manage to take off on the ship while Siggy is distraught. But then he sees Gudrid and Bug Eyes on top of this mountain. So how the fuck weren't they seen or heard sooner? Look how close they are. And then we go from this to this. Siggy's gang looks way closer than they should be. And also the ship must have gone around the whole island in like 20 seconds. Seemed less than possible. Anyway, they manage to escape and go off with Siggy still on their tail. So next is a Hild arc, probably the best part of Vinland after Farmland. Not that that's saying much. One issue with it is how big the coincidence is for them to meet Hild in the first place. You may say Thorfinn has made loads of enemies like her in the past, but I don't buy this. Hild only knew this was the same person who killed her father, however many years ago, because someone called out Thorfinn's name in the past. Maybe I could accept them meeting Hild if she wasn't the literal first person they met after just getting to Norway. Another issue is Hild being such a genius engineer at the age of 13 years old with no apparent training. With these two criticisms said, I will summarize the position we are in at the end of this arc. So, Thorfinn killed Hild's father years ago, and now Hild has Thorfinn in a palm of her hand. She is about to fire a shot, but force ghosts of her father and master appear, and don't let her fire it. I really find the force ghost cringe, but whatever. Thorfinn tells her his Vinland plan, which hasn't changed since finding out about the natives, apparently. I will create a nation, a land of peace. I will build a greater peace even than the ones I destroyed, where I will help raise more lives than the ones I ended, in a new, uncultivated land called Vinland. Wait. So what actually are their feelings about Vinland and the natives? Leif did go there, and I guess somehow figured out the natives didn't have a government, just a bunch of different tribes. Maybe that wouldn't be described as a nation? It just feels kind of insane that Thorfinn is saying he will create a nation in a new, uncultivated land. It sounds kind of like colonialism, which isn't very Thorfinn-like. Anyway, Hild says she will put a crossbow through his head if he is nothing but talk. What she means by nothing but talk, we will find out later. And last thing about Hild. So she wants to avenge her family, so I get how she would want Thorfinn dead. He was the one who killed her father. But what doesn't make sense to me is how she never asks about Askeladd, the man who led the raid on her village. He is the logical one to blame, him and the person who sent him. So why doesn't she care? This also begs another question. Did Askeladd not become a legend? I'm going to assume Hild doesn't know about his death, because she never mentions it. And what about everyone else in this world? He killed the Danish king, and then was killed by the current king. Wouldn't everyone know about this man? And wouldn't everyone know that Canute avenged the man who killed his father? Just a thought, I think it would be really cool if that day became a day of legend. And to be honest, I don't really get how it wouldn't. So now we get to the first scene of Thorkel losing all his interest in parts of his character and just becoming a bumbling fool who just loves his war to such a ridiculous degree. So some random spouses are arguing in the house, but because they are shouting, Thorkel bursts through the walls, destroying the house. And he's just a zombie for battle. I just find it really silly and ridiculous and over the top. But moving on. Thorkel is told to move to Denmark by orders of Mr. King Canute, and he isn't happy. So Thorfinn is all healed, and thankfully they have found a nice home for the baby to stay with a lovely family who let them stay in their home for 3 whole months. So they are about to leave on the boat, and Gudrid hears Carly crying, and she runs back, not wanting to leave the baby. Of course, Gudrid and everyone would be very attached to this little kiddo, and it's going to be a sad but absolutely necessary choice for them to leave him here, because their journey is so very perilous ahead, and they found as great a home as they could hope for right here. So they allow Gudrid to take the baby on the boat with them. Fucking what? This is another point in Vinland where it's just so fucking insane. If not before, the story has lost all credibility now. Why the fuck are they keeping a baby on this huge dangerous voyage? They all would have just fucking died if Hill decided to actually poison them. Remember before they set on this quest, Leif explained the dangers to them? But they want to bring the stupid ass toddler with them anyway. Doesn't Thorfinn want people to live in a place somewhere not here? Hey, maybe this nice little family isn't somewhere not here, but it's sure as hell safer than a year-long fucking voyage. Fuck me, fuck this, why is Bug Eyes the only one with half a brain? He's the only one not being a selfish piece of shit and calling out how terrible this decision is. Okay, so on the ship, Bug Eyes brings up how it ain't a safe voyage, they have people chasing them, and everyone correctly brings up that Siggy's gang would either be way ahead or actually just given up and turned around. Because why would Siggy's gang be chasing ghosts for 3 months around Norway? Well, it's shown they are on the Baltic Sea. Somehow in 3 months they haven't gone anywhere really. And they are being chased by pirates. 3 huge pirate ships against them. It is over. So what does Siggy decide to do here? Well... So he's dead. Yeah, he's dead. How else am I meant to interpret this panel? He is announcing at the top of his lungs that he will kill them and then jumps on their boat with a sword. Look, there's even a dude in the back about to shoot him with an arrow. Okay, maybe they want to capture him alive. It's just hard to picture how they would go about that, and we are not shown it. This is a final panel of them against the pirates, and it leaves much to be desired. Okay, so Floki just arrived in Jelling and speaks to Thorkel and says he has something very nice for him to satisfy his boredom. And would you look at that, it turns out the gang are also in Jelling on the very same day. What an incredible coincidence. What's next? Siggy's gonna turn up here from a grave? Oh, dear God, we are officially in a sitcom. A very unfunny sitcom. So ignoring how we are just not gonna remotely explain how Siggy got out of this situation unscathed, let's just take a step back and appreciate how Thorfinn, Siggy, Thorkel and Floki are all in the same place and just how unlikely that is. And we know some garbage is going to happen to make them all connect. So they are walking about, trying to trade seal pelts for rations, and Thorfinn hides because he sees some people who are in Thorkel's crew, who obviously he doesn't want to attract, and he tells this much to Gudrid. Gudrid, a little later, sees Siggy, and the genius that she is, shouts Thorfinn's name. This attracts Thorkel's crew, and drama ensues. So Thorfinn denies being himself, but they don't believe him. He shouts to Hild, who is watching from afar, and says it's alright, there's no harm here, let it pass quietly. Gudrid is really showing off her supreme intellect recently and calls out to Bug Eyes when he's not involved. What in the fuck are you hoping to accomplish, miss? The only way Bug Eyes could possibly help is if he's not noticed. She is so fucking stupid. Bug Eyes knows this and again is somehow the only one who has a brain. Thorkel's man gets impatient and decides the only way to prove if this is the same Thorfinn is to fight him, so pulls out his sword. Apparently the two women in the crew currently have a shared intellect of Homer Simpson, and so Hild instantly shoots the guy in the arm, which would turn the 1 vs 1 Thorfinn was potentially about to get into a 1 vs 10, because they're completely surrounded and now have reason to attack. Or Hild will get 10 men with swords coming after her, which you probably wouldn't want. Thorfinn ends this by admitting to being Thorfinn and spits some facts against Hild. Okay, so Thorfinn ends up having a chat with Thorkel and Floki. Floki finds out that this is Thorfinn, son of Thors. We find out the seat for the Jom Vikings Chief Dane, the commander, is unfilled. The last Chief Dane didn't give an heir. An ambitious officer named Varn wants it. Floki is too old for the seat, and so he wants it for his grandchild, who is currently too young. And Thorkel exclaims that Thorfinn is a perfect candidate, grandson of previous Chief Dane Sigvaldi, a son of Thors, and a great warrior. Thorfinn obviously doesn't want it, says as much, and leaves. They get out quick, but 2 of Floki's ships are following, and this is the turning point and the start of a Baltic Sea War arc. So how do we actually reach the start of this next arc, which is going to last for 40 odd chapters? Well, I want to emphasize how we basically got here on a ship made of straw. They had to run into Thorkel, Floki had to be with Thorkel, and from what happened to happen, Siggy also had to be there. Not only that, but Thorkel's men had to be there. Gudrid had to see Siggy, and Gudrid had to shout Thorfinn's name whilst Thorkel's men were in earshot. Floki and Siggy assumingly both arrived on the same fucking day, and let's not forget, for Siggy to be there, he had to not die from this, and for some reason, still be in the Baltic Sea to even get captured by pirates in the first place. Thorfinn's gang was behind, literally 3 months, from letting Thorfinn's wounds from hill to hill. It's all just so unlikely and convenient and ridiculous. So Thorfinn decides to get off on his own on an island and go separate ways to the same place, with the pursuers following him. Hild goes with Thorfinn to watch over him. Thorfinn and Hild hide, but the Jom Vikings start burning boats to stop them from leaving. Because of this, Thorfinn shows himself and says to take him to Floki, but they were just sent after him to kill him. So Thorfinn and Hild take them down, knocking them out, not killing them, and then 2 of the last 3 of Floki's men betray the other, and then claim to be actually undercover men from Varn's side. They want Thorfinn to lead the Jom Vikings and meet with their leader, Varn. And Thorfinn, as you would expect, basically just says, nah, no way. I am just a simple traveling merchant. Don't get me involved. So that's that, huh? No, because then they say to Thorfinn, Floki will send a second wave of assassins, then a third. Each time, these events will be repeated. I hate to say it, but it is your presence that brings tragedy to the populace. Please use our warship, Master Thorfinn. It would be best for these common folk. You cannot live amongst these sheep, at least not on the Baltic Sea. So somehow, incomprehensibly, this convinces Thorfinn to go with them. If Floki is going to keep sending assassins after you, then why the fuck would you stay around here? What is Thorfinn hoping to accomplish by meeting with this guy, unless he does want to become the leader of the Jom Vikings, which he clearly doesn't. You cannot live amongst these sheep, at least not on the Baltic Sea. Then leave the Baltic Sea for fuck's sake. Floki ain't gonna be sending assassins to fucking Greece, my guy. Just leave like you were going to. But no, we need this whole shitty arc to happen, so Thorfinn loses all sense, all conviction, and meets with Varn. And now for the worst assassination attempt I have ever seen. So we're with Floki and his son Baldir, and one of the maids decides the best time to stab Baldir is in front of 20 odd guards in the middle of an open space. Now, Baldir was literally just about to go alone inside with the maids, which to me would have been an easier time to assassinate this child, but I'm no assassin, so what do I know? The one who saved Baldir was no other than the greatest character in all of fiction. No, not him, but the one and only Garm. Garm. Now that's a name I will never forget until I am dead and buried. So we leave Garb and are back with my main man Siggy. Now he's a slave for Thorkel's band. I'm confused if Thorkel bought him from the pirates, or if Thorkel's group were the pirates. But either way, Siggy's group is now with Thorkel. So now Wolf shows up and tells Thorkel King Canute assigned him to be his military watchdog, whatever that entails. Thorfinn meets Varn, and the first thing Thorfinn says is, "It's an honor, sir, and now I'll be getting on with my life." Dude, if this is your attitude, then why the fuck do you decide to meet him? So anyway, Varn is crying his eyes out because he seemed to really love Thor's, and then reveals the huge thing to Thorfinn, that it was Floki who orchestrated killing his father, Thor's. To prove this, he brings out Atli, the non-vegetable brother who Askeladd sent off to make himself a good, proper life. This is a pretty huge coincidence that Varn found him, but he does admit it at least. Okay, so Thorfinn didn't believe it at face value, but Atli being here really convinced him, which I think is a little silly. Atli is literally saying right now, "I'll tell you anything. I'll tell you anything you want to know. Let me go home to my family." So I would think the logical conclusion would be that Atli's been tortured to say these things to diminish Floki's character. But instead, this makes Thorfinn go from not being convinced to completely believing it. But to be fair, I suppose it can be implied that Thorfinn was connecting dots from his memory here, because knowing it was Floki who got Thor to leave Iceland in the first place makes Floki being the betrayer make a lot of sense. But more importantly than all this is Thorfinn's reaction to believing Floki was a man who sent Askeladd to kill his father. Now, honestly, I have some mixed feelings, but I can get on board with this reaction. Despite letting go of his anger towards Askeladd in Farmland, he momentarily, completely loses it, and hatred overwhelms him after finding out Floki sent Askeladd in the first place. Now, we have to keep in mind, Thorfinn isn't just thinking about revenge here, but also how much of his own life changed for the complete worse because of Floki's actions. And the reason I think this scene in particular works is Thorfinn had the short spark of hatred, but pretty instantly calmed himself and reflected on his anger and says, "I want to be a kinder, gentler person. I want to be a stronger person." To me, this is set up for if Thorfinn ever comes across Floki, he won't have this reaction again. He will be able to process his emotions in time, like he eventually did with Askeladd after he died. But who am I to say? Okay, so after Thorfinn tells Varn he's declining any offer and wants to leave, Hild finds a slave brothel, a place where Varn's men are raping some girls, some looking very young. So Thorfinn runs to it after hearing men shouting, and Hild is kicking them out. Hild shoots one, and Thorfinn shouts, "No, don't shoot them," which is probably reasonable, unless they want to take on everyone in Varn's forces. But damn, Thorfinn is really in the first situation since Farmland, where his philosophy of minimal violence is truly being tested. How in the hell is Thorfinn meant to save these innocent girls without extreme force of killing anyone who stands in his way? Or will he see the girls as a lost cause and leave them? Man, that would have some crazy implications for his character moving forward. I assume he will ask Varn to let them go, But I would say most likely Varn will simply refuse, or maybe try to bargain with Thorfinn and say he'll free the girls if Thorfinn becomes the leader of the John Vikings. Man, what then? I assume Thorfinn would have to take being the leader, or at least lie for the time being. What exciting moral quandaries and tests for Thorfinn to overcome. So then Thorkel shows up, and all of this was for fuck all. What a fucking disappointment. Pure luck allows Thorfinn to make an easy choice of leaving with the slave girls with him in the chaos. No serious, slow, complex moments are allowed in a sitcom happy-go-lucky of an arc. Garb shows up next to Varn, and Thorkel is getting pissed off that they aren't fighting yet. Thorfinn and Hild are bringing the girls away, who say they all live near and were doing what they were doing because their families could not pay their taxes that Varn's men was putting on them. Okay, so what Thorfinn and Hild don't seem to realize is that if Varn's forces win, they will just bring the girls back, right? I guess Thorfinn might just assume Thorkel will win because it's Thorkel, but still. And if Thorkel wins, I could definitely see his men pillaging the nearby villages. I feel Thorfinn and Hild should stay around to make sure the girls and villagers stay safe. But no, they want to leave. Garb then confronts Thorfinn with Varn's head, and Thorfinn simply runs off, and Garb follows. Garb can catch up to Thorfinn going at full speed, so we basically learn he is one of those characters in this universe, which is a freak of nature. Yeah, Garb is a complete monster. Thorfinn got wounded, and he apparently purposely made it not fatal. Thorfinn simply runs off again, and Garb doesn't follow this time. His logic is Thorfinn will just keep running, and he wants a proper fight. I don't buy this. If Garb kept chasing Thorfinn, eventually Thorfinn is going to have to fight him properly. It doesn't make sense why he wouldn't just keep persisting to me. So Thorkel is now going after Floki, with Varn's men as well, because Floki stole his prize. And I don't know, it's another battle for Thorkel, sure. So Garb managed to get ahead of Thorfinn and Hild, and takes Einar, Leif and Gudrid, leaving Bug Eyes to tell Thorfinn what happened. Now we see the legend King Canute half a year ago. There are too many wolves in his forest, and so he says, have them devour each other. We know the internal workings. Kill the chief and a pack will tear itself apart to replace him. This is clearly an allegory of what Canute is doing right now. Canute was the one who killed the John Vikings chieftain, so the John Vikings would kill each other for the seat. I assume he thinks they were too strong and rogue to be left alone. So Garb managed to detour to Einar people and get to Jomsborg before Thorkel got to Jomsborg. This seems pretty unlikely to me. Look at this map and the extra distance Garb would have to cover. And also, from my very minimal research, I found out that apparently bigger ships sail faster than smaller ships, which would make this even more unlikely. Thorkel might have rested at Varn's base, but that was never shown. Either way, let's move past it. So Garb seems to walk into Jomsborg alone, without the crew, gets thrown in jail for killing Varn and angering Thorkel, and somehow the crew is already in the same jail, but without Garb's men. I don't get how this happened, because either Garb would have just took them into the base, or got them to wait outside with his crew, right? But the crew ain't here, so didn't get captured as well. I don't get it, but let's just move past it. Now, I have to assume we're going back in time a bit, because otherwise, Garb is actually just teleporting. I say this as Thorfinn has just gotten to Bug Eyes. So Bug Eyes told Thorfinn about Garb, and Thorfinn seems like a bit of a bitch to me here. He says, if we go to Jomsborg, I'm likely to kill someone. I just have a feeling. It's impossible to get Einar, Leif and Gudrid out of Jomsborg without slaughter. I don't see the fast resort this time. In order to save someone, I have to kill someone. Okay, for one, this seems like foreshadowing, or Thorfinn having to kill someone, but we'll see about that. And yeah, my issue with this is just despite Thorfinn obviously not wanting to kill someone, I do think the emotions of Einar, Leif, and Gudrid being taken away should overwhelm any emotion of not wanting to kill. Bug Eyes also thinks this and speaks some facts. Huh? What are you? What? You're not making any sense. Get it together, Thorfinn. It's not someone. In order to save our companions, we're going to beat some warmongering assholes with a death wish. What's more important to you? Do you really need to put it on a scale to figure it out? And from this, Thorfinn is still looking unsure, which is just pretty insane to me. If I'm being fair, I suppose Thorfinn might just be feeling depressed and not actually considering whether killing some terrible people to save his friends' lives is a worth it trade-off. Anyway, it takes Bug Eyes trying about losing Leaf for Thorfinn to snap back and say, "You're right, I'm sorry. Don't worry. I swear, we'll rescue them. I swear it." Man, this really feels like Thorfinn is going to have to use his first resort, which will be very interesting. Thorkel has arrived in Jomsborg, and so Floki sends Garb to Thorkel tied up as a peace offering. But it's Thorkel we're talking about, so it doesn't work. Garb and Thorkel end up in a one-on-one fight. Okay, and now for a really stupid escape. So Balder comes down, says he sends the guards away, and simply unlocks the cell. Hey kid, I get you're the future Jomsvikings chief or whatever, but motherfucker, you can't just send guards away. I guess he could have just said they are wanted by Floki or something, but come on, I ain't really buying it. Either way, he's down here. He's swapping them out for his servants and changing their clothes. Leif asks, "You're setting us free?" "But why?" And Baldir replies, "Because I'm the reason this war is happening. Please help me." Okay, so we jump into the middle of Thorkel's and Garb's fight, and something is instantly wrong. Thorkel having lots of small cuts makes sense, but Garb? Remember when Thorkel fought Thorfinn the 2 times? When Thorkel gets hold of you or lands a blow on you, this happens. And this. And if Thorkel ever swings an axe at you, this will happen unless you dodge. Garb's cuts here makes no sense whatsoever in a fight against Thorkel. What is this panel? Just random movements and this? It should be a fight with speed against brawn, like back when Thorfinn fought him in the snow. But now it's speed versus speed with zero strategy. How does Thorkel, the absolute mountain of a man, fall over here? Back in time, his only weakness was booting him in the head, and now he's falling over to shallow cuts. Thorkel's main man even says, "They're quite alike." No, they are not. Well, not fighting techniques and builds wise. Garm and Thorfinn are alike in that nature, not Thorkel. No one is like Thorkel. Okay, and then Thorkel's main man calls it a draw. Yeah, good luck telling the 2 people whose main goal is looking for a good fight. Just stop fighting mid-good fight. Oh shit, it worked. Thorkel's man's logic is, it's a waste of strength, and if they continue like this, both of them are going to suffer wounds they'll never recover from. I honestly can't see either of these people accepting a draw. I really can't. One of them should die. I feel like it would be easier to argue for Thorkel. He would be more excited for a big fight than to finish up one duel or something. Maybe. But Garb's pretty much only character trait is looking for a good fight. And he's presented one on a platter. Well, he's halfway through his meal. He accepts a draw so quickly and says, "Oh crap, I had arrangements with Thorfinn after this. I was having so much fun I forgot." Why is fighting Thorfinn more interesting to him than fighting Thorkel? Shit makes no sense. So the battle is broken out, and Baldir is telling the gang that he doesn't want to be chieftain, and to tell Thorfinn to stop the war. He thinks Thorfinn is leading the battle because he says an envoy from the attacking forces asserted, "Our chief Thorfinn is the rightful ruler of Jomsborg." With Varn out of the picture, it feels weird that Thorkel would send this envoy to say this, but whatever. He gets them to the well, the secret tunnel, and after Einar and Leif go in, Gudrid loses all urgency and starts chatting to Baldur about taking him with them. Because of this, they get caught. A guard starts talking to them, and I guess Leif is going deaf because he can't hear the guard talking to them and shouts for Gudrid. And then Gudrid comes up with this shit. Everyone just thinks everything is just a fucking comedy, and it's gonna get worse. And like, come on, if she gets found out, she might get thrown in prison or just instantly killed. And this fart thing goes on, and it pains me to my core. The guard manages to get tricked anyhow, like an actual Assassin's Creed NPC. Must have been the wind. You get it? Like a fart? I can play your game as well, Makoto Yukimura. Okay, then Thorkel gets a ton of logs thrown at him, and then he gets oiled and fired. As in, gets oil and fire thrown at him, lighting him on fire. Thorkel then decides to jump into the nearest water. Okay, so correct me if my science isn't up to scratch, but oil plus fire plus water equals big explosion fire, right? But no, instead it just puts the fire out. Whoever was working with Yukimura and didn't mention this should be fired. So Einar and Leif are on the battlefield, and when they run down the hill, Leif gets wrecked by 2 arrows, one in the leg and one in the back. And guess who Einar happens to run into coming up the hill? Well, it's our good friend Siggy. This is just a classic coincidence that have been bountiful in this arc. Now Thorfinn, Thorkel, Einar, Leif and Siggy all meet at the same time. Everyone starts screaming at Thorfinn about various things, but most importantly, he finds out Gudrid is still inside and says, I see, alright, don't worry, I'll solve this. I appreciate showing these Vikings about to be executed, talking about life and death and Valhalla. I really like it. Thorfinn and Hild are going to go through the secret tunnel, and Siggy has been tasked to follow them. One of Baldur's maids surprises him and leads them to Gudrid. I've done it, and inside Jomsborg, the glory will be all mine. Who is brother talking to? Then his cronies pop up the well, and they all start shouting. Hey, it's not like they're all gonna die if someone hears them. Well, some guards hear them as the fat one pops out of the well. Siggy takes care of them, and then more and more guards show up. They are fucked. Garb sprints up a vertical wall, which I find ridiculous even with his god powers. If everyone in Jomsborg can't kill him, then battles just become silly. I get Thorkel and Thorfinn are also crazy busted, but this is just another level. Then we get some more comedy with the subtlety of a slap in the face. Okay, let's get something straight. These are Jom Vikings we are dealing with. Have we forgot? Remember how menacing the Jom Vikings were back in Farmland? Only Snake had the upper hand against them. They are literally the strongest group of fighters in all of England and Denmark. But despite all that, you're telling me Siggy and the Fat Man can get out of this situation like it's no big deal. We don't even see it on screen. And then start sneaking around and lighting fires, which is a signal for Thorkel's army to move in, by the way. Then these couple of plonkers start talking while looking like this. Something about Gudrid and Siggy not loving her or some bullshit. I don't give a fuck. What is happening? So then Thorfinn starts chatting to Baldur and Gudrid with no sense of urgency, just chatting away in the middle of an enemy base with the grandson of their leader. Not a care in the world. This diddy-daddling results in Floki barging in, and Thorfinn gets enraged. Floki tells 2 guards to kill Thorfinn with no caution for his grandson right next to him. Thorfinn incapacitates them both and screams, Floki, sword in hand. Okay, before anything else, I want to clarify where Thorfinn's psyche is on killing and violence, hatred and revenge. Number 1. If push comes to shove, Thorfinn will kill someone for self-defense or to save innocent lives. Number 2, I can imagine people so horrible that Thorfinn would kill to prevent future suffering and death from happening at their hands. Number 3. There are certain scenarios where Thorfinn will kill out of pure feelings of hatred and revenge. Number 4. When Thorfinn first came across the beaten Arneid back in farmland, he seemed immediately angry, but quickly calmed down. When Arneid died, Thorfinn was deeply sad and angry, but I wouldn't say revengeful. When Einar was going to kill Ketil, Thorfinn stopped him and basically said that Einar shouldn't follow the path of vengeance that he had. Okay, I despise Ketil, and obviously he's deplorable, but he isn't evil. I assume Thorfinn thought out how Ketil got to this point mentally, how immensely he got fucked over by Knut, and how he was about to lose everything. Also, Ketil probably wasn't intending to kill Arneid, and what he did was technically legal, as she was his slave. I think a lot of Thorfinn's anger would be towards the system that allowed this, as well as Ketil himself. And the last and most important thing for what's going to immediately come up. In Farmland, Thorfinn said he doesn't hate Askeladd anymore. Now, obviously Askeladd is dead, but I would wager, if Askeladd came back from the dead, alive and well, Thorfinn wouldn't have any feelings of revenge. So why would Floki be so vastly different? Well, that brings us back. Thorfinn isn't just looking mad, he's looking like he's lost all sense of self. Thorfinn never even looked like this back in the prologue. It's ridiculously exaggerated and goofy. Okay, Floki does pull out a sword, but then mid-speech, Thorfinn slashes him, cutting off 3 fingers, and here again, Thorfinn has zero control. He's then about to swing his sword and murder Floki, but Baldur jumps in the way. Thorfinn holds his pose for quite a while, whilst Hild and Gudrid talk. Hild is aiming straight at Thorfinn, and Thorfinn must be aware if he kills Floki, Hild will kill him as well. Thorfinn only puts down the sword after Baldur starts crying and saying things like, "Kill me instead, I'm to blame for everything, I'm sorry I can never stop him." Then Thorfinn snaps the sword on his knee. I think the scene is essentially a character assassination of Thorfinn. In a scene where Thorfinn got angry when finding out Floki killed his father, anger overwhelmed him, but he very quickly calmed down, processed his thoughts, and said he didn't want to be like that ever again. Why would seeing Floki change that much and make him so utterly mindless? He was with the person who killed his father for 12 years, and he was never just mindless like this. He had 12 years to kill him in his sleep, or any other time, but his emotions let him wait to attempt to kill him in a duel. Somehow, current Thorfinn got to a point of being more controlled by revenge than kid Thorfinn, whose entire life was revenge. And like I brought up before, Thorfinn had no hatred for Askeladd anymore after he died. Why would Floki be so different? And also, Baldur's and Hild's presence just confuses the entire scene. We really have to assume Baldur is what prevented Thorfinn from killing Floki. I don't see how else we can take it. And then we need to consider that Thorfinn would have killed Floki, despite knowing him killing Floki would be killing himself by Hild's hands. So you're telling me our current Thorfinn would kill for revenge while killing himself in the process, whilst kid Thorfinn wouldn't have when he wouldn't have died in the process? What world are we living in? I get Thorfinn eventually woke up, but too little too late, my friend. Okay, and as a little icing on the cake, Thorfinn does not know for sure that Floki ordered the kill on Thors. I get he would find it likely, but he doesn't actually know for sure. Also, they were very lucky no girls heard all the shouting and crying. They tie up Floki and wander out. Thorfinn says, "That was close," and I'm just thinking back to when he punched that farmhand out of anger, and from that got a whole dream sequence, and ended with a complete philosophy and conviction change. But when he chops off 3 fingers on a guy out of anger, he seems relieved that's all he did. I understand Floki is a different thing to the farmhand, but still, come on. Okay, so the soldiers filled up the well. While thinking of another escape, Baldur had the idea to take himself hostage and then leave and take him with them to a place somewhere that's not here. Anyway, next we get to the point where we get to the... You guys remember when Vinland Saga was this? And this? And this? And this? And this? And this? Well, now Vinland Saga is this. This one panel speaks for itself, so I don't really know what to say. So instead, I'll make a guttural sound. Is that even what a guttural sound is? I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. I feel lost and afraid. Another fart joke. Bravo, Yukimura. You must have been real gassed up to write that zinger. And then this panel. You guys remember Askeladd? I do. Askeladd was a great battle tactician, but he was too fucking stupid to think of a barrel blaster technique. Fuck me. Anyway, Siggy and Fuckfat run into Thorfinn and co., which are surrounded by hundreds of John Vikings. Thorfinn, with a hostage, shouts for them to open the gate. After Thorfinn gives the boy a paper cut to show Floki he ain't kidding, Floki shouts for them to open the gate. But oh my goodness, Garb is here too. So Garb shows himself and decides this is a good time to fight Thorfinn, next to the hundreds of John Vikings that want to kill them both. And Siggy decides it would be a good idea to fight him. Thorfinn blocks Siggy as Garb goes for the kill shot. Okay, then a lot happens all at once. Siggy gets hit with 4 arrows, and the John Vikings move in to get Bodir. Look at this panel. They are royally fucked, and by fucked, I mean if the John Vikings get close, they will be sliced to bits. But Thorfinn decides to run off with Garb anyway. Gudrid does this, and now we get this panel. Why are the John Vikings such clown people, and how the fuck haven't Gudrid and gang died by now? Miraculously, Siggy is up from the arrow wounds and saves Gudrid by threatening Bodir. From Thorfinn's POV, they all would have just died, Gudrid obliterated, if Siggy couldn't get up from his wounds. Or just anyway, just take a step back and just realize what this situation is. They are surrounded by hundreds of John Vikings, and clearly aren't really using this kid as a hostage. The kid could have run away here. It's obvious. They also have bows and arrows. It's so insane. And Thorfinn's just running away from Garm, somehow not realizing the such ridiculous threat on his friends. What Thorfinn needed to do was to quickly convince Garm that he will fight him later, after everyone is safe. And if that fails, Thorfinn just needs to fight him. Whether he can only win while going for a lethal blow, so fucking be it. Gudrid's life is in such ridiculous peril. Why was he so much quicker to kill Floki out of revenge than to kill Garb out of necessity to save his friends? Even Garb knows this. Okay, they manage to open the gate, and Siggy wants to commit suicide for no reason, while Thorkel's forces charge in. I can't even process what's going on, to be honest. Hild steals Balder from him, and Fatman, Siggy, and Gudrid get out, after Gudrid says she'll go back to Iceland with him. Siggy survives 4 arrows, and getting hit unconscious, and then jumping off his hill. Dude, he's got arrows in his back. If he falls on them, won't they pierce through him? Yes, Garb, he should be wondering that, and it's fucking nuts how he can conceive of them being fine, to be honest. Then out of nowhere, we get a pretty good chapter of a random warrior coming to the conclusion that Valhalla isn't real, and so dying in complete sadness and regret. Baldir suddenly becomes a complete edgelord out of literally nowhere. He went from his only character trait being wanting no war to wanting everything to fucking burn. Garb confronts Thorfinn and basically says Thorfinn ain't trying and he should fight. Fighting's fun. Thorfinn throws away his knife. Wow, he's just like Thor, so cool. Except Thor's did that to sacrifice his life for his son's life. Thor's had already dueled with Askeladd and won. Shouldn't Thorfinn just do the same to Garb? Because Garb is someone we've already established to be stronger than an unarmed Thorfinn. So what's Thorfinn gonna do? Well, he starts with antagonizing Garb, saying he can win without taking Garb's life, calling Garb a child, a loser, and lastly ends with Garb saying, "And when you lose after a boast like that, won't you be exposed as a fool, Thorfinn?" Thorfinn responds, "I'd be an even greater fool to use my blade on a child. Let me see what you've got, broomhead." And Garb charges in and lets both his arms be grabbed. I just can't get on board with Garb getting so angry at Thorfinn calling him a loser that he becomes this brain dead. But it's just like Askeladd. Askeladd's relationship with Thorfinn is a hell of a lot different. And Garb has fucking spears, not daggers. I can't buy this shit for a second. Then we get Garb's backstory, where he kills like 10 adults as a fucking 5-year-old. So unbelievable. He's killing them with a fucking spiky stick. So Garb accepts Thorfinn's win. Thorfinn says, "The next time we meet, I prefer we became friends." Which reminds me that I should reiterate that Thorfinn still has no clue what happened to his actual friends, to Gudrid. She is in the most perilous situation imaginable. There's a 99.9% chance she is chopped into pieces, and yet Thorfinn doesn't give a single fuck. So this is the last we ever see of the greatest characters in all of fiction. Garb, you will be missed. Okay, now Hill's character loses any potential interest. She says she would have killed Thorfinn if he killed Garb. So Thorfinn isn't allowed to use self-defense? That doesn't seem remotely fair, and it ruins any dynamic that they've somewhat had. How does Thorfinn killing in self-defense show he hasn't changed and deserves to die? Holy shit, it's just like The Shining. I can't believe it. It's a motherfucking reference. And now, I used to think the downfall of Vinland Saga was a tragedy, but now I realize it's a fucking comedy. Floki, out of the deepest crevice in his arsehole, produced whatever in the good Lord's name this fucker is. This fucker would be my go-to for evidence that Yukimura got a lobotomy between Farmland and this arc. Only Ymir knows how a writer can write this and then write this. Anyway, big guy Ymir tackles Floki, and whatever, let's just move past it, plow through it. Okay, I've never seen in my life a character with so little character flip on a dime regardless. It's kinda hilarious. Baldir, at first, said he doesn't want any bloodshed, he just wants peace. Then out of nowhere he becomes a complete edgelord and thinks he just wants everything to burn. Then now, Baldir is running away crying, I can't take it, and thinks, grandfather will sacrifice anyone and everyone as long as I'm around. I can't handle this anymore. Then he goes to kill himself but pussies out. So he flipped again. This is so fucking hilarious. Baldir must have extreme multi-personality disorder, or this is beyond incomprehensible. Literally 180ing a one-dimensional character's only dimension. So the fight apparently ended. Floki lost, obviously. Thorkel's fighting the Beast Titan still, and says Thorfinn is the leader to deal with Floki and such. Thorfinn seemed real worried here. I just want to know the chance he thought they'd be alright, because a second ago he didn't give a shit. Anyway, so Thorfinn's told he's the new Jom Vikings leader. Thorfinn asks for a favor from Thorkel, and then stands in front of everyone as the leader of the Jom Vikings, to give 3 orders. First, he exiles Floki and Baldir, instead of executing them. Then he says Jomsborg will be abandoned, and they should dismantle weapons and free the slaves. The people ain't happy about this, but Thorkel has, I assume, a forged paper from Canute, saying he's in charge, and he decides to put Thorfinn in charge. Thorfinn's last order is to disband the Jom Vikings. Okay, honestly, it feels ridiculous that Thorfinn can just do this, but I guess everyone who had a good case to be leader is dead, and no one would want to go up against Thorkel. And why Thorkel is letting this happen, we'll see. So they actually just let the warriors sort everything out, and Thorfinn is surprised they are fighting. If all that sharing of gold and freeing of slaves was going to happen, Thorfinn and Thorkel would have to be the ones to manage it. So Thorkel wanted to duel Thorfinn for exchange for his help, and Gudrid punches him suspiciously near his dick and balls. And then she starts crying and says she loves Thorfinn, and that persuades Thorkel to not duel. And Siggy is here listening the whole time. Oh my god, who's gonna get with Gudrid? I'm so excited. I feel like a 13-year-old girl watching Twilight. Then Siggy tells Gudrid to ask Thorfinn out and then leaves. He almost definitely does not have enough development for this to work for me, but it feels okay. Then I think it's implied that Thorfinn says he loves Gudrid. So Gudrid liking Thorfinn was not very subtle, like sure, whatever. But Thorfinn loving Gudrid more than just a friend has absolutely zero build-up. But at the same time, I don't really give a single shit. So Siggy saves one of Yuva's children, and then he speaks about what happened with Thorfinn, kidnapping Gudrid and such. Then Siggy returns to Halfdan's place. He's like, I failed, I'm gonna leave, I wanna be free from you, father. Then Halfdan's like, idiot, get him and tie him up. Then Siggy's girl says he's her wife now, and he's like, okay, sure, and she unties him, so they can escape with Siggy's friends. Oh no, but Halfdan found him. So then Siggy and Halfdan start going at it with their chains. Siggy's mother is like, oh, they are only joshing? Halfdan's never been so happy. I mean, it looks like they're gonna kill each other, by accident, if nothing else. But sure, everything's a meme now anyways. Siggy wins, then pisses off with his friends, and now wife, and Halfdan is proud of him. And they live happily ever after. 2 years later. Yuva thinks that Halfdan is mad that Thorfinn kidnapped Gudrid and is now raiding their village, and so she tried to shoot arrows at them. Okay, it is absolutely wild to assume this is 100% Halfdan, and if it is Halfdan, it is crazy to assume that he is raiding the village. So Yuva literally attempted murder, and it was on Thorfinn and a baby. Oh, but she's a woman, so it's the funniest shit I've ever seen. My bad. So we skip 2 years, they got the gold, we much later find out that Thorfinn banged Gudrid and she's pregnant, and they get married. Fantastic. Okay, that is the end of this extraordinary arc. Alright, before I get into what we got in this arc, I'm going to start with what we didn't, which is the great King Canute. After becoming king, Canute went down a dark path. His dream of building a paradise here on Earth turned into, I, King Canute, have to gain absolute power to take control over this kingdom, or else this paradise can't be realized. The curse of the crown, as Swen put it, was boosting his ego and fueling his ambition to conquer all. The first, without a doubt, immoral action Canute took was poisoning his brother, Harald, to gain the other half of his kingdom, Denmark. Harald was on only good terms with Canute, and was helping him by sending forces to conquer the rest of England. But because Canute had to be the one to control everything, to build his paradise, he poisoned and killed his brother. This is when Canute started to speak with his dead father's head, which is a sign that his mind had been corrupted. King Swen's head presents a mirror to Canute and his dead father, which he detested, but also eggs him on to continue down this path of blood. Canute was then struggling to pay for his huge army in England, and so decided to take over farms such as Kettles by means of expropriation. He says, a king is a sword. What king in the world can rule without power? So then, after essentially taking over Kettle's farm, he finally talked again with Thorfinn. King Swen, being the devil on his shoulder, is saying, you cannot find common solace. You are the lonely shepherd, and they are the pitiful sheep. You must raise them, thin the herd, sell them, harvest their skins. How can a sheep understand the duties of the shepherd? All you can do is rule, Canute. That is what's best for the sheep. Thorfinn then says, Canute, if you intend to see this madness through with force, then Swen ramps it up. He is dangerous. No sheep should be allowed to disobey the shepherd. Kill him. The rampage of one sheep can lead the herd astray and over a cliff. Kill him before it happens. Kill him. Then Thorfinn says, I will run. Swen vanishes and Canute doesn't even believe it. You run? That's it? That is all? You let yourself be beaten to a pulp just so you could stand before an emperor and admonish him to his face. And it didn't work. Farewell, your majesty. Knut feels like he should be angry, but then he thinks it's absolutely hilarious and incredible. He is a beautiful man. To think such a man could be from Viking kind. Hey, yo. But no, really. Thorfinn, who from Knut's point of view represented a lot of what a Viking was, could transform into a man such as this. Knut's whole warped image about sheep needing his guidance was shattered. This sheep paved a path on his own, despite hardships, and when Thorfinn just after proposes his plan to build a land of peace through different means, for the sake of those who cannot live in the world Knut creates, Knut realizes there's another shepherd amongst the sheep. Or really, there are no shepherds. He is the leader, the king, but can now trust his own people to help him forge his greater goal. And with this, he leaves Kettle's farm and doesn't take over any others. He takes most of his forces away in England, but it actually works in his favor, and the English support greatly increases, which I would have liked to have seen more of in detail, but we can't have everything, I guess. Okay, why the long-ass tangent? Well, I simply think Knut should have been a dude-tagonist after Farmland. His final arc has begun, but it hasn't concluded. He managed to diverge from his path of blood and evil, and is on his way to becoming the great King Knut, building his land of paradise through better means. I just think we need to see this new Knut in action, his mission on a huge scale, versus Thorfinn's mission on a small scale. Thorfinn and Knut both being on a path to find their upper willingness of carrying out violence, and the optimal way to use it, but both coming from opposite ends of the scale. Thorfinn from not wanting to hurt anyone ever again, and Knut doing anything necessary to create his paradise. Instead, Knut's only in a couple of pages and is implied to have started the John Vikings War. It's such a shame that we didn't see more of one of the three most interesting and important characters in the entire series. Or maybe we are lucky he didn't get character assassinated like the rest. Speaking of, I'll start with Leif, as I don't have that much to say. I thought it was weird he was seemingly keeping the fact that his brother lost the war with the natives of Vinland a secret. Another thing is, now I'm thinking back on it, him, more than anyone, with his "a woman can't be a sailor" attitude, shouldn't be letting a fucking baby on board. Where is a baby can't be a sailor attitude at? Second human being, if she counts, is Ylva. I won't go over it all again, but I just find it impressive how quickly she became so terrible in personality and writing. Helga's one comment I found very weird, so that's also some pretty efficient damage to her, considering how little screen time she had. Who's next? How about Floki and Baldia? Floki, up to now, seemed pretty smart, very cautious, and very ambitious. He managed to get very chummy with King Sven. I don't exactly know how high up he got in the overall system. I guess he was the captain of the king's most powerful army. In this arc, he kept his ambition, but his intelligence, like everyone else, got flushed out the shitter. Baldia is interestingly horrifically written. His character went from wanting peace to wanting war to wanting peace again, and had no other traits. So that's fun. Next, Siggy, why not? I just can't take this dude remotely seriously because he ain't written remotely seriously. His dumbfuck friends have so little character that I wouldn't consider them characters. Siggy is a dumb, rash maniac whose funniest thing about him, despite the amount of supposed jokes involving him, is the amount of times he should have died. His father Halfdan was okay. His way of taking over people's land is kinda interesting, I guess. And now for Mr. Shonen himself, Garb. Garb's only trait is wanting to fight someone stronger. What else can I really say about this dude? In some places he seemed decently smart, but in others really fucking stupid. So I don't really know. Okay, now the big man Thorkel. My highlight of him in the prologue was when he said he wished he went back with Thor's back then, so he could find out what it meant to be a true warrior. I would have loved if Thor could ask Thorfinn about what it meant to be a true warrior, now that Thorfinn has gone through so much change. But no, he just loved fighting and war. Just a big missed opportunity there. And now, for my unironically favourite character in this arc, Bug Eyes. He was the only one who didn't want to bring the fucking baby with them, which instantly makes him the most moral and intelligent one of the bunch. He's also the only one who actually has some funny moments, because he's motherfucking Bug Eyes, baby, my hero, my goat. Alright, now about Hild. Here is a character who actually had some potential, but fuck potential, let's just keep her as an NPC who just hides in the bushes, watching. Creep. And then right at the end, we find out this whole time she wouldn't even let Thorfinn use self-defense, which is so fucking childish and stupid. Also, she never asks about Askeladd, which makes her main character trait of seeking revenge for her family, devoid of all logic. Now for Gudrid. She had some character in Halfdan's village, but then she just became very bland and stupid. And now she's just been relegated to Thorfinn's wife. If she died, I'd say Gudridance. And now for Einar, the dudagonist of the Farmland arc, but sure as hell not the dudagonist of this arc, because he does fuck all. I actually can't think of one thing this man did, and that alone is such a shame. I love this man in Farmland. My main gripe with him, along with a baby for everyone except Bug Eyes. But yeah, the even bigger issue is his reaction to learning natives who warred with Leif's brother are in Vinland. He had no reaction to his plan in Arne's memory getting shot in the dick. And finally, the main character. Let's get the easier stuff out the way. Like Einar, Thorfinn should have reacted more to the new knowledge about the natives. Like everyone but Bug Eyes, Thorfinn should not let a fucking baby come on board with him. Okay, Thorfinn has become a fucking moron. My picks for this would be him letting out the bird. I can't comprehend what was going through Yukimura's brain when he wrote this one. My other pick would be him going to Varn when leaving would clearly be safer for everybody. Okay, now let's talk about Thorfinn's use of violence. So he was going to murder Floki for the sake of revenge, but couldn't kill Garb quickly to save his friends. This incongruence is, to me, where I would say his character is assassinated and a lost cause moving forward. So that's about it. I don't have much more to say. The entire plot was abysmal. The plot armor rivaling Game of Thrones Season 8, the comedy rivaling The President's Pick of Art, the greatly loved series Velma. But that's all what the plot breakdown is for. So there's not much else to say. I guess I would like to end this video with why I made it. I realized it wasn't actually because this arc is so weak. Well, that's a lie, it's definitely a big part of it. But the bigger reason to why I made this video is that Vinland Saga was just too strong.